This is the Clean Energy Show with Brian Stockton and James Whittingham.
Hello and welcome to episode 35 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. Welcome to an entertaining discussion of the week's developments in clean energy and transportation. This week, Brian, there's all kinds of things going on again, isn't there?
There's too much. I'm overwhelmed. We should maybe just not bother. It's too much.
We're going to have to hire more people. We're going to need a staff. We're going to need a headquarters, perhaps a skyscraper somewhere with solar panels on it. There's all kinds of things. There's late breaking things. There's Tesla's earnings call is coming out in just a couple of hours from when we're recording this, or 1 hour and a half, and that's Wednesday afternoon. And they've released a full self-driving beta to a handful of people. And of course, they had to sign a non-disclosure agreement for that. But as you would normally happen, we'd see more people leak out, right?
Yeah, I was sort of wondering if we'd get any leaks on this, but probably not.
Yeah, I've been refreshing the electric page. Even as we speak, I have it up and running. So if there's any last-second information, this is huge. I just read a hit piece in the Washington Post on Tesla self-driving, and it was mostly negative. It was mostly most people say they can't do it without LiDAR. Even iPhones have LiDAR now. What do you make of that?
So this is a brand new article that just came out?
Brand new article, yeah. It was discussing the latest thing and how they shouldn't be doing it. All the competition says they shouldn't be doing it. They're not ready, and they don't have, regular drivers.
Well, there's definitely a question there, and I I'd never watched the full Autonomy presentation, and we got lots of stuff to talk about here. I want to talk about nuclear fusion, and I want to talk about AM radio, but there is lots of Tesla news. But yeah, I just watched for the first time the full Autonomy Day presentation, which was from about a year ago. I had seen clips, but I hadn't watched the whole thing. And it was very much like Battery Day, where it was like they really laid out the roadmap, but it was maybe too complex for a lot of people to understand. But, the roadmap is laid out, and they were saying they'd be releasing a version of it about a year from now, and the presentation was about a year ago. So they're close to not quite meeting the targets that he was saying in the presentation, but it's all coming.
Well, basically right now, it will stop at a stop sign or a stop light, right? If you have full self-driving in the city at low speeds, you have to sort of acknowledge the green light manually. Is that correct?
Yes, although now I believe it goes through green lights without having to acknowledge currently.
So the latest beta just gets rid of the stopping part and just goes through everything and takes care of everything. Slowly, he said, right? He said it'll be slow.
But it's a complete rewrite. It'll be running on a completely different set of code. This is the new foundational rewrite that they started from the ground up. So it will have similarities to the old one, and it will hopefully pick up where the old one left off. But it's a whole new build, and I'm just dying to see a YouTube video leak out somewhere.
We all are. This is a big deal because this is the future of the planet here, because as soon as robotaxis come, and as soon as that breakthrough happens, it's a downhill decline for fossil fuels, for one thing. And because the idea is that robotaxis, there'll be large fleets of them. They'll have to power them by solar because they'll have to be electric in order to be cheaper than the competition. If you don't go that way, then you're going to get annihilated. And that's why automation is good for the planet. And we are anxiously awaiting, and no one really knows. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, what's your bet? If you had to bet today, what would you bet on the date that a robotaxi comes to, say, Los Angeles and is widely, Uber is buying into it, doing everything? What would you say? What for a date? I mean, it varies widely between now and never. So that's a big range.
And first of all, I'll mention, too, something I learned from watching the autonomy presentation is you won't be able to, it sounds like you won't be allowed to use it on an Uber network. If you're going to use it as a robotaxi, it'll have to be on the Tesla network. Like they have something in their agreements when you buy the car. You have to run it. So they could still run Teslas on the Uber network, and they probably do now with a human driver. But it sounds like that will not be allowed with the autonomy. But he said lots of things in the presentation about how LiDAR is a fool's errand and LiDAR will not work. And so, but you're telling me there's still proponents on the other side who think that LiDAR is the way to go.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So it remains to be seen, but, it was a pretty compelling case after I watched the whole, 2-hour plus presentation.
Of course, there's billions of dollars at play here, including your riches and Tesla stock.
Yeah.
If it went well, you'd be an even wealthier man and could hire a robot to replace you for the podcast, which will be nice and, something different. Hopefully, I don't know, somebody with sparkling personality and wit that can match yours, but an AI intelligence nonetheless. Yeah, so I just, whoever gets there first, it's a big deal. And Waymo just started to do Phoenix without a driver. We mentioned that last week. Chevrolet's, what are they called? Cruise? Chevy Cruise, fully self-driving vehicles have started in the tricky city of San Francisco, supposedly. So there's a race on here. And maybe Elon didn't want to go ahead with the beta right now. Maybe that got pushed ahead a bit, but there seems to be they were sort of being very casual with this for a long time, and all of a sudden there's a sprint to the finish line.
Well, I think there'll be a long period where the car will be self-driving, but there'll be a human backup. And for Tesla, they'll need to do that for a certain amount just to get the data, because, the more cars they can have doing this, the more data they can collect. And, they know they have data on, like, every time the driver intervenes, they have a recording of that, a record of that. So, once they can get a few thousand of these cars on the road collecting data, they'll be able to see, at this corner, the driver had to take over. At this stoplight, the driver had to take over. And it's an exponential growth in the software. Like it's AI machine learning is all kind of exponential. So it's just going to accelerate from here. Yeah.
And, what they're saying is that the camera can't detect a box truck from they had an example of it detecting poop as pylons at a cow pasture, and
this is in the article you read?
Yeah, it was in the Washington Post, and it's just, I feel for Tesla because they get so much unwarranted negative press from people who just don't understand what's going on. The fact is, he's saying the cameras will basically be human. They'll be artificial intelligence. They'll be able to detect things, and they'll put together a 3D view that LiDAR can't. And they do have some radar on, right? They have a certain kind of radar that is measuring the distance between objects, but not telling them the shape of the object necessarily.
And the question I always had was winter, right? Because we live in a frozen hellscape for half of the year. And that's always the first thing that I think of, and probably you think of, is like, well, this is ridiculous. How is this going to work in the snow? And it's very much answered in the presentation. And the idea is that if a human can see it and drive it, then a computer can see it and drive it. And there's really no reason why that formula would be any different. And as time goes on, they rely less and less on things like lane markings, because of course the lane markings, particularly around here, are terrible. They don't really rely on GPS or maps. It's all vision. And that's going to be the key. If a human can see it and drive it, then a computer can see it and drive it. And there's really no reason to doubt that.
Yeah. And they're saying, the article's saying, well, it's not going to work at night. It's not going to work in fog. And these are the conditions. But if a human can do it, the cameras are actually better than my eyes. You know that?
Yeah, that happens all the time, especially modern digital cameras that they can see in the dark. It's crazy.
Yeah, they can see in starlight, for God's sake. I mean, it's crazy what they can do now. Anyway, Brian, I wanted to mention that we are now in India. Isn't that something?
Oh, that's fantastic.
India, and I'm going to say hello to our Indian listeners. Hello, everybody in India. I hope it's nice there. Looking forward to the next monsoon season in late spring, our time. India is the largest country in South Asia. Brian, did you know that?
I'm sure. Yes, I knew that.
Did you really know that? I mean, come on. Of course you knew that. We all know that. There's your thing.
Thank you.
The word Indian comes from Sindhu, a local name for the Indus River. India has a population of 940 million people. I think if we can get half of those people listening to our show, that's pretty good. We'll have a pretty big show if we can get half of them listening. So everyone in India, tell your friends, this is the Clean Energy Show, and we are here for you. Oh, by the way, Brian, we can't swear anymore. That's a major detail. We could get banned in India for swearing. So let's just be
damn
careful.
it. I mean, darn it.
Golly. Just have to bleep them out from now on.
So what has changed? There's a particular server that we had to be on to be in India?
Well, podcasts are largely listened to on Ghana, which is a sort of the Spotify of India. So it's a server, sort of a music service that has an area of podcasts, and podcasts are big. They're about even 8% of North American audiences are coming from India these days. So this is fairly new that they've been allowing that on. So it's expanding rapidly. Anytime something expands, I mean, if we can make it in China, I'm all for it. We may never be able to travel there again without getting arrested, but we can change the system from without. Anyway, hello, India, and we'll try and have some India news for you on a regular basis because there's a lot going on in India. We've already been talking about it in the last few episodes, so if you're new to the show, check out our last few episodes. We've been talking about India, especially as a political example of not going to EVs, but I've checked out the EV news in India, and guess what? They are still pushing forward with EV mandates, and that's on the horizon. So what do you have for us this week beyond the full self-driving? I mean, the GMC Hummer came out last night. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it looks okay, but it's very expensive. It's going to be available in very limited quantities for, a very long time. It's the thing we always complain about. It seems like a decent vehicle, but it's a little too late. It'll be years, it seems, before it's in any kind of serious volume production.
You know what I'd like to see? It's an impressive vehicle, by the way. It's $120,000, the most expensive early version of it. And the cheapest Tesla Cybertruck, I think, is $60,000. So it's like twice. The most pimped up version is twice as much as the Cybertruck. But it is kind of a cool vehicle. I mean, you can take the top. I mean, you'd have to be independently wealthy to have it as a toy. And those are the people who are going to buy it. Maybe a few businesses will buy it just to get attention. There's a guy down my street who I vastly dislike who has 2 gas Humvees or diesel or whatever they are, Hummers in his driveway with the name of his bar on it. And he's got a giant political sign for a right-wing party, like so giant that you think that maybe that he's very close to that party. So we're questioning whether the party has any green credentials at all. So what I'd like to see, though, is I'd like to see them sell one to every market, because that would be really good advertising for EVs. I mean, because people, rednecks and otherwise, would be like, whoa. And if you're like us and you're appalled by such sights, you'd be like, wait, that's green. It's an EV. But man, sell one to every market and have it as an advertisement for not only for EVs, but for the company, which is going to go downhill pretty soon if they don't watch it.
Yeah, it's a potential halo car for GM. It's too expensive for most people, but ultimately probably pretty cool.
So what have you got for us this week, Brian Stockton?
I want to talk about the cutting edge of technology, which is nuclear fusion and AM radio.
You lost me at AM radio, and I was barely hanging on with nuclear fusion.
Well, I've been driving around listening to AM radio, and it's because, so I don't know if you know this, but the Tesla cars don't come with an AM radio tuner. They only come with an FM tuner.
Right. So you have to stream it?
And so my premium connectivity on my Tesla got restored. So I now have lifetime cellular data for free from Tesla.
Lifetime.
And so
how do you know? How do you know it's lifetime? I don't understand. How do you know it's lifetime?
Well, you go into the menu on the thing, and it just says included package, premium connectivity, included package. And
so was that a glitch? I mean, what's the internet saying about this? Why is that happening?
Well, apparently there was a lawsuit brewing in Quebec that Tesla didn't do very good communication around this. So at one time when you bought a Tesla, premium connectivity was just simply included. Everybody who bought the car got premium connectivity for the life of the car. And at some point they switched, and you would get just a 3-month trial, and after that you'd have to pay 15 Canadian dollars a month. But Tesla's not always great at communication. And so they kind of botched the transition from getting it free to having to pay for it. So a bunch of the people that bought the car around the same time that I did started complaining, and there was a potential lawsuit brewing in Quebec over, sort of false promises, false advertising. So they seem to have done it as a preemptive measure to sort of, cut off this potential lawsuit. But it's just fun driving around listening to AM radio, which I never do. But because I have the premium connectivity, you can get AM stations through the TuneIn app on the car. And it's fun because it actually sounds way better than AM radio. AM radio sounds terrible.
Yes.
It's surprising it even still exists. Like the sound quality is just horrendous.
It is surprising.
But if you've got the cellular connection, you can drive around listening to all your favorite AM stations at super high quality.
Used to be on AM radio when I was a lad. Well, an old lad.
I did. I got my start as an AM radio announcer.
Yeah. Well, I was probably in high school. You were a household name. Brian, as you are now for the Clean Energy Show, just in a different way, with all the sex scandals and such, and things like that.
Yeah.
So, I'm very curious what you have to say about nuclear fusion. I can't say it. That's twice now. Nuclear fusion.
Yeah, so Green Tech Media has a story that just came out. MIT validates the science behind new nuclear fusion reactor design. So nuclear fusion is sort of the opposite of nuclear fission. Instead of blowing things up nuclearly, you can, you get free energy out of nuclear atoms. I don't know how it works, but there is a potential to generate huge amounts of power if they can solve this. And it sounds like they're kind of one step closer. They're going to have a sort of they're building a pilot project, which is maybe 25 megawatts, something like that. And they think that they can eventually get that higher. I think it's like that machine in, Spider-Man 2 that turns Dr. Octopus into a supervillain. It's something like that.
Something like that. Very similar to that. I'm skeptical. Are you not skeptical about the whole price thing?
Oh, yeah, I'm skeptical, too. That's the real issue behind it is when you can get solar panels for as cheap as you can get them and batteries getting cheaper and cheaper, it probably doesn't make sense to go down this path because there's so much money it's going to cost to build these things and validate them and keep them from blowing up and turning people into supervillains. But nevertheless, I'm fascinated by the science of it and be kind of amazing if they got it to work.
Well, maybe there's room for it in certain situations in certain parts of the world. I mean, it'd be better if we didn't because of the waste problem. Waste is an issue, and it never goes away, and it's dangerous and not pleasant. But if it is a base load power, and our provincial government, as well as two others, for a total of 3 in Canada, 3 different provinces are getting behind this now, even though it doesn't exist yet. Solar and wind exist. Battery storage exists. Nuclear fusion, not so much. Not yet. Who knows when it's going to be? I mean, it could take 10 years to come to maturity. It could take another 10 before you get idea to plant off the ground for environmental approval and all that. And by then, Brian, it's 2040. Our podcast would have been over for 10 years because we're only going to 2030. And, I'll be able to have a solar panel on my hat that powers my whole house. Like there's advances in solar panels coming still. Those take a while to mature. All right. So I wanted to talk about, we were talking a lot about Battery Day in the last month for Tesla Battery Day, but Jeffrey Dawn he gave a presentation. Every year he gives a presentation, a short one. Somewhere or another, and everyone pays very close attention to what he says. He's contracted for Tesla at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, and he was talking about batteries. This is basically, he was saying this Coke can. I'm not getting any money from Coke, unfortunately. This tiny Coke can, it's not a normal Coke can. It's a smaller Coke can. If you compare it to the size of my skull, that's about the size of these new batteries, he said, these smaller pop cans that are out now. How many milliliters are in this? 220 milliliters. Don't ask me how many ounces that is. 90 calories. There you go. So that's the size of these new cells, and they're fat and they're big and they're energy dense and energy powerful. So everyone was looking for clues into what he was saying. And last year he made big headlines and a big stink by saying that Tesla probably has our lithium-ion batteries are going to be lasting 1 million miles. And he was taken aback by all that attention. And this year he says, guess what? It's 2 million miles.
2 million miles.
3.5 million kilometers, which is a lot longer than any body of any car will ever last in the world, whether it's used 24 hours a day or, it's the equivalent of 41 years of daily driving. So he has these graphs, and they charge and discharge batteries at different rates. And he says you don't want to do that with the current EV batteries that are out there in a lot of cars, but there are differences between the battery chemistry. Some are good and some are bad. He's working on the good ones, obviously, with Tesla. And he's not even fully, I don't think, versed in everything that Tesla does. But the point is, he said that when they charged and discharged, to 25%, and then recharged all the way back up full every day, that it would have no degradation whatsoever. Now, a typical use for that would be if you have a 400-kilometer car, right, with a range of 400 kilometers. So let's say you had a job across town in a bigger city and you ended up using a quarter of that to go to and from work every day. If you did that and charged it up every day, there would be no degradation over 41 years. Based on the chemistry that they're testing right now. There's not theoretical. They're testing them in the lab. They have them there. They're done. They're just testing on how well they perform. And the ones that go to 100% charge and down to 0% charge, which is supposed to kill a battery, actually, it looked like maybe 12% degradation over decades. So what this means, Brian Stockton, you're probably asking, James, what does this mean?
What does this mean?
It means batteries that they put into grid storage will last 25 years. So if you do a grid storage project for a town, for a reservation, for a business, for the energy grid, the electricity grid, you don't have to worry about that. In fact, it's so cheap that he's saying, don't sell it to somebody, lease it to them. Lease it to them for a small amount of money, because you're going to make that money back after 10 years, and everything after 10 years is gravy for 15 years. It's a terrific investment. Yeah, he's saying they're so cheap, don't sell them, lease them. That's how cheap they are.
And eventually, of course, as these things get more energy dense and cheaper, then you can design all of your systems, if you want to, storage or cars, so that you only ever need 25% of the battery. I mean, that's kind of about what I use right now, typically 25% of the battery in a day. But if it's a robo-taxi, just put in a bigger battery and charge it up.
I don't know what the economics are that, but they would figure that out and see what the sweet spot is. And it's fantastic. So yeah, people worry about how long will my EV battery last. Well, it's done. It's over. That question is no longer valid in any way, shape, or form. Just forget about it.
Well, it's still valid probably for cars being sold now. I mean, I've already lost a few kilometers of range on my car, so it is valid for cars being sold now, but obviously improving quickly.
Yeah. And it's good news for the grid. It's good news for energy. People say Elon was even against sort of vehicle to grid charging, where you could make money selling electricity to the grid from your car that's plugged in and sitting there when the grid needs it in order to save the grid operator money. Well, if you do this, it's not going to be a big deal. You could say, well, do 25%. That's how much I'll give you, and that's how much I'm making. You'll have range. You'll have a battery that doesn't degrade, or you can set whatever you'd like.
Yeah, and Musk is probably thinking of a day, too, where most of his Teslas are driving around continuously on the robo-taxi network. So they're not going to have time to plug into the grid and feed the grid. So I think that's the other reason he's not as big on it is, he knows his cars are going to be driving all the time.
Somebody asked him about fuel cells, and he started in fuel cells about 20 years ago. He was working with fuel cells and lithium batteries, and I have a clip here of what he thinks about fuel cells.
You have to produce hydrogen by electrolyzing water, which is fine, but it's only about 70 to 80% efficient. And then the hydrogen has to be stored somehow, and on a vehicle that's stored in a compressed tank. And compressing the hydrogen is about 80 to 90% efficient. And then the fuel cell itself, when it's operating, is about 50 to 60% efficient. So when you multiply all these efficiencies together, you get about 35 to 40% efficient.
I don't understand people who are big on fuel cells in cars. It seems like a bloody joke. I mean, it costs you $100 to fill up. There's not very many stations. It's a lot easier to, and it's not green. Right now, it's not green. Theoretically, it could be green. It's not green now. They're using natural gas. I don't get it, Brian. The Toyota has Mirais going around, and the government talks about supporting it. Now, there's probable uses in shipping and maybe airplanes one day, but it seems ridiculous to me that anyone would even go there.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like a bit of a dead end for cars, especially since we've made so much progress in EVs so quickly. But potential uses, like you say, shipping, planes, why not?
Or even, battery. You remember how California's had excess solar and wind on certain days? He said, well, if you have days like that and you have a hydrogen plant making hydrogen and you need to use excess energy to just waste off, that would be a good way to waste it off and just make hydrogen under those circumstances. But as an efficiency, the best efficiency it is 50% of the best case scenario. The dream scenario is like 50% of what the efficiency of a battery electric car is. So in other words, you would need 4 times as many solar panels. If you did go green and you did make the hydrogen with solar, you would need 4 times the solar farms to make one. Somebody asked him, what do you wish that the general population knew about battery storage that they don't know? Here's his answer.
I wish they all knew what a kilowatt hour was. Because many have no idea what a kilowatt hour is. They get their electricity bill, they say, it's $120, but they don't realize they're being billed by the amount of energy that they use. And they don't appreciate, a kilowatt hour, a megawatt hour, a gigawatt hour.
Yeah, so a kilowatt hour is 1,000 watts for an hour. So if you had a 1,000-watt hairdryer and you plugged it in for an hour, it would use 1 kilowatt hour. Used to have 100-watt light bulbs. We don't anymore, but how would you explain it?
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I would explain it. But he's totally correct. It is a slightly confusing concept. So I know what it is, you know what it is, but yeah, the vast majority of people, and of course, when you're talking about this stuff, you often talk about kilowatts. So, my car in the driveway here can charge at 7 kilowatts. So you're always talking about kilowatts as well as kilowatt hours. And, I can understand why it's confusing for people.
Yes, people understand gallons of gas and liters of gasoline, but there's no time involved. You're adding another dimension here with time, which makes it complicated. So he suggested that because these batteries are so efficient and don't degrade, that he said school buses would be perfect for vehicle to grid, because you could charge them with solar during the day, have them do their run at night, power the grid at night, do another run in the morning and get charged up. And that, if you know what your vehicles are doing, and they're large scale vehicles like that, and a school bus system would make money doing that. It would become cheaper to our school system, and maybe they'd get better education and music and things like that. So yes, 15,000 cycles they've done so far, and that's 41 years. So it's great. It's just, it's a big deal. I know batteries are awkward. They're not sexy like fusion, or what else is there? Hydrogen. But because we've had batteries in toys and everything else for years, but and this is the future. Little cans of chemicals, hopefully dry and lasting a lot longer than I will. I mean, I'm 54 years old, and that's and another thing I keep pointing out is that it's not going to be dead. It's not going to be, the battery's not going to be a garbage item at the end. It's still going to have 70-80% of the capacity left when they retire these, and they won't have to retire them. You just have a little bit of extra land and add some more storage to it to make up for that. Now it becomes very cheap, and they keep going, and that's 50%, and God knows how many years, maybe 50 years or whatever. And then you recycle that battery, and you get 99.5% of it, which is what they're talking about now, and getting all those minerals out and reusing those minerals for new batteries. So it's quite exciting. I'm very excited about all this talk about how battery recycling goes, because people, one of the first questions people ask me is what happens to the batteries?
Well, and, going back to an earlier episode of this podcast where we were talking about that terrible documentary. What was that called again?
Oh, I don't even want to know, but it was Michael Moore endorsed, but not Michael Moore made. Yeah.
Yeah, like you sort of get this argument from people that it's still, okay, so we're switching to batteries, but we still got to dig up stuff from the ground. But we are working towards a future where, and I think, most of the world is oblivious to this, where, like you say, sure, we have to dig up the ground to make all these batteries, but they're going to last a hell of a long time, and then you can recycle them. It's an amazing future ahead.
It is. And I'm probably not going to live to see it. The COVID's going to get me, Brian. The COVID's going to get me. So also Starlink has approved by the Canadian government. Did you see that? Do you have any thoughts on that? Being a Starlink applicant.
Yeah. So you and I have both signed up to be potential Starlink beta testers. I have heard nothing from them yet, but now, yeah, they've been officially approved as an internet provider in Canada. So everybody's going to be watching their inbox to see if they get an invite to get in on the Starlink beta test.
It's basically the south of Canada, the north of the United States, that little area. And that's where we are. Yay.
Yay.
We're in the south of Canada. If you're listening in India, it's on the other side of the world. And everyone here is wealthy. Really? Are we wealthy? You're wealthy. You have Tesla stock.
Yeah.
I could have had Tesla stock and been in the same economic class as you, gone to the same parties, known the same people, but no, I did not buy Tesla stock last summer.
I go to all the COVID-free parties.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You're not invited to those.
I have to go to the damn COVID parties. That's no good at all.
But yeah, that's potentially exciting. I was going to say they had another launch the other day. They're launching more Starlink satellites every couple of weeks. They've got 800 of them now in the constellation, which is a crazy number to have done so quickly.
And to think that they're communicating with each other and not crashing into each other, and they're a low orbit, so hopefully nothing else is there.
And a couple of them have already come down to Earth, which is normal for satellites.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they burn up in the atmosphere, so they don't hurt anybody, but they'll have to constantly be refreshed. Like they're not going to last forever.
Why have a couple of them come down already? They can't just constantly squirt satellites up there.
It's a normal part. Apparently satellites come down all the time.
I know, but Sputnik didn't come down the next day, man. Come on.
Skylab came down. Remember that?
Yeah. Remember it vividly. Hit me on the head. Later in the show is the lightning round, where I'll be feeding all kinds of clean tech headlines at Brian, and he'll give us his opinion on them quickly. It's a skill testing section of the show that you won't want to miss. Brian, the Tesla Sales and Delivery Center is coming to our home stomping grounds, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, so up till now, the closest Tesla dealership, I guess they're not really a dealership, they're a delivery center.
Showroom
or
and service
them.
center, I hope. I don't think...
Yeah, so the closest one was in Calgary, which is an 8-hour drive away. But yeah, they're going to open a center in Saskatoon, which is just a couple hours away, and then another one in Winnipeg, which is 6 hours away. So all the prairie provinces will be covered very soon with a Tesla showroom.
Which is amazing. And they've also announced recently late-breaking Halifax, which is
right, that's right,
on the east coast of Canada. So we have a vast country here, sparsely populated, and we're somehow covered suddenly. I mean, you had your Tesla delivered to you. It came on a truck from Calgary, and they dropped it off at your front door, right?
Yeah, so that's what they used to do. It came on a truck that only was carrying 2 cars, And apparently a few months ago, they stopped doing that. And I think it's probably because the volume of delivery was just starting to spike up because more people are buying Teslas. So in the last few months, people have had to go to Calgary to actually pick up their cars. So people were kind of upset about that. But it was probably partly in anticipation of this Saskatoon center opening up. So people won't have to go to Calgary anymore.
And they had trouble financing as well, I understand. And at least one person was flown to Calgary to pick up his car when he complained. So that's nice. In a way, it's nice.
Yeah, I have heard that where they have flown people to Calgary to help them out. And yeah, the financing is weird because, yeah, but anyway, it's no, that's big news.
And you still have to drive your car back 8 hours. I did that once. I flew to Calgary to pick up a car, and it's not easy.
Oh, you did?
It's a long, I mean, I'd rather be driving a Tesla than with the piece of junk I picked up, but it was.
Well, yeah, what did you tell me about that?
It was a minivan for my brother-in-law when we were having our second child. He said, "You can't drive around in that crappy car. You know, I'll sell you my minivan at a good price." And what a piece of Ford junk that was. I mean, I appreciate the offer, but it was nothing but problems. So it's been replaced.
No, and I kind of thought I'd have to fly to Calgary to pick up the car, but you know, with the Supercharger Network, the Supercharger Network finally opened up on the Trans-Canada. So having to do it before the Supercharger Network would have taken a couple of days, but fairly easy to do now with the Supercharger Network. But also I wanted to mention I finally sold my Hyundai Veloster.
Oh, did you? How did you do that?
I put an ad on Auto Trader, and somebody nearby came and bought it, and I'm slowly divesting myself of fossil fuel vehicles.
Well, how did that go? Did they twist your arm? I mean, how was the negotiating involved? I mean, how did that happen?
Yeah, well, they took their time. They came a couple of times to drive it. It took like 3 or 4 days to sort of. They came and drove it and thought about it, came and drove it again, thought about it. We negotiated a little bit on the price, and that was that. Yeah, I'd never really sold a car like that before, so new experience for me.
How did they pay you? Because it's thousands of dollars.
They paid me with a certified check.
And you were comfortable with that? You weren't nervous?
I was slightly nervous. Well, in fact, I only deposited it a couple of days ago, so it was, maybe I should check my bank balance to see if it bounced. But I think what you're supposed to do is go with the person to their bank and have them make the certified check kind of in front of you so the teller can sort of verify to me that, oh, okay, this is a certified check. But I just trusted them. I think it'll be fine.
Oh, well, you're so wealthy with your Tesla stock. I mean, what's a few $1,000s out the window?
Yeah.
I laugh at your wealth. Anyway, it keeps going up. There's no end in sight. It's going up and up and up. Anyway, I find that amusing because when I bought my Leaf from a car dealership in Montreal, who is an area that doesn't even speak English, at least where I bought it, it didn't speak English. And some people spoke very broken English. It was hard for me to communicate with them because that's my only language. And I had to send them a certified check for $10,000, and it was scary. And had to go right from my bank, and my bank couldn't find their address, and they had 5 people working on it for 2 hours, and I'm sitting there in the area, and I was nervous and thinking I'm going to lose my Leaf because it was the last one in the bloody country that I could afford. Because there was some incentives in Quebec that came and went, and I was sort of buying up one of the last ones. Anyway, I wanted to mention that Tesla in China is recommending charging the new LFP battery, which they're putting into Tesla vehicles, to 100%. That's the lithium ion phosphate sort of mixture of chemistry that they're using in the Chinese-made Model 3s, which, by the way, they're selling to Europe now.
Wow. So the recommendation for my car is to charge to 90% unless you really have to charge it to 100. So you're telling me that it's going to be 100% for those cars?
For those cars, they're telling them to charge to 100%. And I don't know why, and no one knows why. Tesla doesn't have a publicity department anymore to field questions from the media or things like that. So no one really knows. Maybe it'll come up in the earnings call that's taking place as we speak. We'll see.
And also, too, all of these batteries, not just from Tesla, they do try and build headroom into them so that even this 100% is probably not actually 100%. Right. It's they hide part of the battery again to help the longevity. But yeah, maybe they were just able to put in a bigger battery to add more sort of safety headroom. I don't know.
They did say at the bottom of this article that was on the Chinese version of Twitter called Weibo that it charges to 100% at least once a week to help balance the voltage between the battery packs.
I see.
And, on the Nissan Leaf forums, I have a Nissan Leaf. I used a Nissan Leaf from 2013. They always say, no, you don't really need to do that. Batteries balance at anything. They balance at 10%. They balance at 100%. They balance at 80%. And there's a lot of people with that point of view. However, it seems that my range gets boosted up if I charge it to 100%. In fact, when I first started charging to 100%, it would be all night. It would sit there all night charging 100 and it would still say 20 minutes left. And that's because it was balancing. That's because some were at 100% and some weren't. So I think that it had never really been charged to 100% in a long time, or if at all in its previous life. And so maybe they're just finding that with this chemistry of batteries that it falls out of, and you lose your sense of how many kilometers are left as well,
right? Yeah,
in your range and so forth. So there's a direct contrast to what Tesla has been going on in North America, as you say, and they even say leaving it 100% can harm the battery for North American buyers. So I don't know if you think anything about that.
Yeah, not
okay. Really. Paul in Ontario, I understand you've been trying to send us emails and it hasn't been getting to us. I apologize, Paul. But it's not me. We checked the spam filters. We checked the system. It was kind of broken for us in a way, but it's not our fault, and they're just not getting through. You can try Twitter as a direct message or smoke signals or something like this, but here's how you can get a hold of us.
The Clean Energy Show wants to hear from you. Contact us on Twitter, Clean Energy Pod, by email, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, by voicemail, speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Well, like you say, Brian, it's a very busy week here in clean energy land. What else do you have for us? Do you have anything you want to mention?
Yeah, just one more Tesla story. Tesla has officially launched the 2021 Model 3. So this is a slightly refreshed car. Tesla doesn't do traditional model years. They don't make changes at the model year date. They just make changes whenever they feel like it. But there are a few things that all sort of happened at once. And so they decided to call this the 2021 Tesla Model 3. And it does make me a little bit sad because I've got the 2020 and the updated one is going to have a heat pump. So it's going to be more efficient for heating in the winter. It sounds like it's going to have a heated steering wheel, which I do miss. That's unfortunate. A slightly longer range, which is always amazing. Updated console, that kind of thing.
I'll give you $100 for it right now, your car, right now. $100. Put on.
Well, my consolation is that I now have the premium connectivity for free for life. So I'm still okay with the car.
Okay. Well, that is the pain of buying a Tesla. Yes, they do improve, but they also constantly update them, which is a good thing and a bad thing in a way, too. Plus, the heated charge port is another thing there.
Yeah.
Anything else this week, Brian?
Just one more fire story.
Oh, yes.
The Chevy Bolt EV is now under investigation for potential battery fire issues. And we talked about this last week with the Hyundai Kona. So, electric vehicles do sometimes start on fire, and battery fires can be quite dangerous, but still, nothing like the caveat to the story is always that there are 200,000 gasoline vehicle fires every year just in the United States.
As we are speaking, vehicles in the United States are burning. Gas vehicles are on fire as we speak.
If there's 200,000 a year, there's probably 1,000 burning right now.
Alexa, what is 200,000 divided by 365?
200,000 divided by 365 is 547.9452.
Fires per day.
That's a lot.
And that means there are probably 6 or 7 fires burning right now. as we do this show. Does that wrap it up, Brian?
Yeah, I'm good.
Well, then I'll ask you to put your feet on the floor and sit in the upright position because it's time.
The Clean Energy Show Lightning Round.
All right, Brian, I'm going to read you some headlines now in rapid succession, and you can give us your comments on it. Otherwise, you get the buzzer. Tesla is closer to building a battery factory in Indonesia. Report. Indonesia is the new China when it comes to low-price manufacturing.
Yeah, and part of this has to do with it was either nickel supply or lithium supply. I think it's lithium in Indonesia, so it makes sense to go where the source is.
That's a very good answer. I'm quite impressed, actually.
Thank you.
Pope Francis picks up a hydrogen Toyota Mirai. The Pope-mobile is powered by hydrogen.
What?
This a couple of days before he says that same-sex unions are okay and shocking the Catholic Church everywhere. So I don't know what he's on, but he's changing rapidly. But he's not what he should be doing. He's had a Nissan Leaf before, but it wasn't the Pope-mobile.
So you said all those negative things about hydrogen, but apparently hydrogen's endorsed by God? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, hydrogen is indeed endorsed by God. And yes, there are Christians in India, in case you're wondering. It's a wide plethora of religions in India. In fact, it's quite diverse compared to here. I was reading about India. It's our new audience, Brian. I have to read up on it. Tesla Megapack in Alberta's wind charger project is now online. It is 10 megawatts. That is in our backyard here, next door province. A Tesla Megapack charged by wind turbines. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I had that story saved somewhere.
And you lost it.
So I don't have anything to say about it other than that's cool that's now running.
The Tesla Model Y is now outselling the Model 3 in the United States, which is what Elon predicted.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they still don't have a kind of a lower priced trim that they're selling, so it's maybe slightly surprising because the Y right now is way more expensive than the 3. But pent-up demand for an SUV, people have had a lot of opportunity to buy a Model 3 in the last few years. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Foxconn solid-state battery EV platform is coming. That's the makers of your iPhone. Your iPhone, Brian. They are now making a platform, which is basically a skateboard with wheels and a battery that you can put everything on, from a delivery van to a sports car if you want. And they claim, as other people have, to have solid-state batteries, which is dubious.
Well, that's surprising. I mean, it remains to be seen if they can do that at scale, but that's always good to hear, more advancements like that.
The plug-in vehicle market in Germany is at 16%.
I agree.
Am I crapping out again?
No.
You just have nothing to say.
The questions are weak, but I can hear you okay.
It's not a question. It's a headline, man. It's a headline.
Okay, it's a statement.
Okay. Tesla removes the 7-day return policy on vehicles in Canada. Your thoughts?
In Canada or everywhere? Is it everywhere?
Well, it started in Canada. I don't know if it spread to everywhere or not, but that's the first headline.
Yeah, so Tesla always had a 7-day, no questions asked return policy, which always seemed like a good idea. So I'm a little surprised that they took that away, but maybe it was causing, I don't know, too many headaches or something. I mean, I think you could return almost anything you buy, I think. Like, it may be a pain in the ass, but, most things can be returned if you complain about it enough.
Okay. Tesla Model Y electric crossovers equipped with the optional tow package are being recalled for inoperative trailer brake lights, but Tesla claims to already have remedied this issue with an over-the-air update, and you don't care about towing, so you're probably not going to comment.
Don't care about towing, but sounds like a fairly minor issue.
It's cool that they addressed an electrical problem with, because people who tow trailers always have electrical problems with their trailer lights. They did it over the air, which is going to freak a lot of people out who tow. Okay, New Jersey calls for gas car bans by 2035. That is a second U.S. state calling for a ICE car ban by 2035. That is the banning of the sale of new combustion vehicles, so just electric only.
Well, if you listen to the Clean Energy Show in our 10-year podcast project, we I think it'll be all over by 2030, maybe sooner. So, but I think we'll hear more of these announcements probably every week.
Yeah, the more cars that get out there and the cheaper they are, the more government policy will quickly fall into line. And as we know, Norway has banned them in 4 years from now. Polestar Canada begins offering test drives in Montreal and Toronto. Vancouver is coming soon. So they're actually getting the Polestar cars out in Canada and actually for real. Does that impress you?
Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, it seems like a decent car.
Okay. For India, I have one here. The average customers in India said they would consider purchasing an EV by 2022. And so they surveyed the populations of countries, and they said, when do you think you would buy an EV by? And they give them a year, and then they average those years. And in India, it's 2022, but the global average is 2024. So we have politicians here in oil countries saying oil is going to be sold forever because everyone in India who is clawing their way into the middle class is going to want cheap cars, not expensive Teslas. Well, guess what? The people in India don't think that. They think even sooner than everyone else of getting an electric car. And I'll bet you that it has to do with pollution. If you're in India, send me a text or an email. We're on Twitter. All over the place. Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, these things are always more urgent where there's lots of pollution. And here where we are, it's the emissions per capita are outrageous. We have some of the highest carbon emissions per capita of anywhere in the entire world. But because we're sparsely populated, it all just kind of blows away and nobody really thinks about it too much.
Yes. Well, that's it for this week, Brian. And we'll see you again next week on the Clean Energy Show. We're here every week talking about the latest headlines and news and clean energy, just having a conversation about it because we love the progress that the world is making, and it's exciting and all kinds of things are happening. We'll see you next Wednesday.
See you next week.